parents, staff, or community member would like to know what was discussed. If you do not wish to be recorded, please let us know at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock tonight. If you'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So the first item on our agenda tonight is our public hearing for the 2023-2024 budget. So I will call that hearing to order at this time.
So I think this is me. I know. It's hard to do this online. It's so much easier when we're in person. Okay, so good evening to everybody. There is not much of a presentation over what we talked about in July. There has been no changes to the budget that I presented to you at that time. I have received no calls, no comments, no emails from the community or staff members. I do thank the board members who did give me questions. I appreciate that. What I would add for information on top of what was previously I presented to you is that with this budget, we are continuing to fund items that were approved by our voters through the levy process, such as athletics, clubs, transportation, nursing, and technologies, just to name a few. We are continuing that process. We're doing what promises made, promises kept. We are definitely funding the things that were voted for during the levy. With this budget, we are also continuing the process. This is our last year of ESSER dollars, so we have been stepping down the use of ESSER dollars. This will be our last budget with those funds. They have to be spent by this fiscal year end, and so we've been stepping down the reliance on those. And even though we're stepping down the reliance on the ESSER funds because they're going away, we are continuing our commitments that we made and we started with those. So we're using position control and other means to watch our spending, watching our staffing, but continuing our literacy work that we started during that process, continuing our extra work for kids that are falling behind through their lots of summer school that happened this year. And then we're continuing to work to our programs, our self-contained programs such as LAP and Title, SPED, continuing work to having them fund the expenditures to match the revenues in those programs. So that is all I had to say tonight to add to the other one. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I don't think I have any questions, but I do want to acknowledge, I appreciate the planning that has gone into our budget process since COVID with the ESSER dollars and prioritizing the programs that support our students. So the creative ways that we've identified to support kids and their learning, that we're able to continue those. So I don't necessarily have questions. Ed, I don't know that the community may be able to recognize the cost savings that we've implemented throughout the last few years in order to plan for the reduction in ESSER dollars. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Just one of the things that happened, not just with us, but other neighboring schools during the pandemic, when you close school, you don't carry the same amount of expenditures as you planned. So you save money on power, heat, garbage, lights, electricity. So there's a lot of non-employee costs that are saved during that time frame. So we saw, as did many other systems, their ending fund balances grew during the pandemic because certain expenditures decreased. Well, you can afford to spend out of that to the point you can't. And so one of the things that we have been living on the last couple of years is not only ESSER dollars, but we have spent down the ending fund balance. As students and staff have returned, we have gone out of the way to increase intervention, support, to really focus on academic growth, to stop gaps and really accelerate learning. So we're at the point now, as what Marcy is talking about, where that money is really declined by millions of dollars, and our expenditures have declined by millions over the last couple of years. And we've had to make some hard decisions in that regard as well. And we'll have to continue to do so. So one of the things I think that since we started a little bit earlier, you won't see Orting in the same headline, for instance, as a Seattle that is looking to cut $84 million or $34 million out of the central office on a very short time frame. The other challenge that impacted neighbors, but not really us per se, is enrollment. We saw a decrease, but a slight increase or return. Others didn't see students come back and or they saw a decrease. And so those factors have really hit. And then the last factor, none of us could predict it when we were bargaining contracts a few years ago. The IPD, the implicit price deflator, was scheduled to be only like 1.5%. So we bargained contracts with, 1.5 doesn't feel very good if you're a teacher. You want to see something in maybe the 2s or 3s. Historically, that would have been a very good bargain. Kathy and I would tell you there's years where we were taught and we received less than 1% per year. So, a couple percent is pretty good historically, but no one knew it was going to be 5.5% or almost 4%, that inflationary cost. So what we have calculated in our system is that every 1%, we have to come up with about $170,000 to make that shortfall for unfunded positions. The ledge post-McCleary didn't solve the fact that we are underfunded in nursing, underfunding in specialists, underfunded in secretarial, you name it, just about everywhere other than teaching is underfunded significantly. So we have been leaning into that for the last couple of years, trying to make reductions without breaking promises made to the community and without raising levy funds. Many other systems have maxed their levy out at $2.50 per thousand, a Sumner, a Bethel. And when the board made a decision this time around, you wanted to be under $2 to recognize that times are tough and you wanted to lean in with that fiscal conservancy at the polls. And so with assessed valuation growth, we're coming in at $1.71, $1.72 this year. We haven't seen preliminary numbers for next year. So even with the bond ask, which we predicted we would have, we're still trying to be under what neighbors are paying, to the point that when we did research during the bond, we found in Pierce County, we are the lowest tax rate of all school districts in Pierce County. So those are maybe just a few talking points about what we've seen and how we're trying to lean into that. I think we'll be continuing that for at least one more year, maybe two, as we really see what our new normal is in a post-pandemic era. Because we've had a lot of restrictions, and even 2 years ago, a lot of outflow that had to happen with extended absences, time to mandatory. You had to be gone and away. And we even started the year last year with COVID protocols. Remember, 5 days. You had to be gone. So this is really the first fiscal year we're about to engage in with no pandemic lingering requirements. And so we need to figure out what our new normal is this year and how to live within those means. So I just applaud Marcy and her team working closely with Debbie and HR, trying to figure out what are that changing dynamics, and then how do we do our best to recommend to you to how to live within that, but not lose sight of the priorities and the goals that you set along the way.
I just wanted to add that thank you, Ed, for saying that and reminding us that through the budgeting and our bargaining, we've made sure that not only did we stay fiscally responsible, but we also managed to keep a lot of our employees. And so we aren't facing the bus driver shortage that is on the national news. And we still have most of our teaching staff. So I think it showed that we were being responsible and taking care of our employees at the same time, which we have all committed to.
The only one other piece I would add is the last 2 years, we saw in budget a significant difference between revenues and expenditures. We have closed that gap even further in this budget. We'll be watching enrollment very carefully in September and October to make sure the numbers we use to estimate budget are viable and solid. We cannot afford to spend and have a smaller fund balance than we were really maintaining this year without having enough safety net. Because if you remember, most of your budget in revenues comes in July and August, well after you have spent money. So we need enough to get through the lean months, your Marches and Aprils, when we don't have property tax revenue and other pieces. So we've dipped a little bit below 10%, and our goal is to be at least 10. So that's a number we're watching very carefully to make sure we can maintain that. If you get too much lower than that, with your reserves you have to keep for categorical, for scholarships and other earmarked funds that you can't touch, we don't want to dip so low that we are no longer fiscally solvent. And so those are things we're watching like a hawk, even with this budget. I feel like we're within the boundaries, but it doesn't take too many kids not to come or for you to take your eye off the expenditures before you can be in a pickle. And with our team, I feel very confident that we'll be watching on an ongoing basis to make sure we don't get that way.
Okay. Thank you very much. Great explanation. All right. And as I understand it, Bonnie, we've had no public comments or anything for this hearing at this time.
So nobody emailed me. I'm not sure if there's anybody attending who wanted to make a comment.
Director Rabb is on site adjacent from me in the boardroom, and we do not have anybody present desiring to speak publicly.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Steve and Ed, for remaining in the sweltering offices. All right. So with that, I will close our public hearing, and then we will take action on this budget later in the meeting. So closing the meeting, knocking with my pretend gavel. All right. And now we have our community comments period, and I don't believe there are any comments. Just checking the chat window. And Bonnie, you've not received anything for general comments?
So I believe you're still within the budget hearing section of the meeting. Is that correct?
No, I thought I closed the budget hearing.
Okay. So then we're going to move to modification of agenda.
Okay. Sorry. I
believe that's where we're at. Okay.
Oh. Yes.
Okay.
Modification of agenda. Sorry.
Thank you. No problem.
I lost my place and was looking at too many community and staff comments all at once. All right, so we do have a modification to the regular board meeting agenda. Looks like the addition of a personnel consent agenda. So I will entertain a motion to add that.
I move to approve adding an addendum to the personnel consent agenda.
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now, board recognition followed by community and staff comments. So board, I'll open the floor for any recognition that you'd like to mention.
I'm going to say a shout out to the middle school band. Looks like they went down to Evergreen to a festival down there. What a good time to be able to go and do that over the summer. And, from everything I hear, they did a great job. So good job to the middle school band.
Oh, it's exciting.
I want to say I walk by several of the schools every day, OPS and the high school, and it has been a busy place. There have been kids about doing summer school. There have been the cross-country team practicing meeting together. I guess practice isn't started. But anyways, and the custodians and maintenance are hard at work in this difficult summer. So I want to thank them. Things are looking nice.
Good.
It's been a while since I've had to do the whole microphone on and off thing, so sorry, a little bit rusty there. I would like to give the shout out to our Ording High School teacher, Mauricio Portillo, who was featured in the Tacoma News Tribune as a BIPOC trailblazer of East Pierce County. If you haven't had a chance to read the article, I recommend that you go take a look at that. His relationship with his students in that club is phenomenal. The kids obviously really look up to him, and he's doing some great work there. He's been a teacher at OHS for 5 years and is the Culture Club advisor. And the article that was done on him was really, really nicely done, and he was well deserving of those accolades.
Well, I honestly just have to give a shout out to Bonnie and to Denise Kaling, because I had a few problems with my computer, and Bonnie got a hold of Denise, and Denise was already home because it was past work time, but she met me down at the district office to fix the problems, and that was really, really nice of her. She didn't have to do that. So thanks to both of you for helping me out.
Very nice. Very nice. I would like to give a shout out to the staff and all the teachers putting in the hard work in August, preparing for our students to join us in September. As the community enjoys summer break, it sometimes, we don't always think about all the work leading up to the moment of the first day of school. And I just want to shout out to everyone that it's been a great summer, but we've seen your cars in the parking lots, and we appreciate the work that you're doing. And we can't wait to welcome our kids back at the beginning of September. It's literally right around the corner. All right. That's all. I will go ahead and move to community and staff comments again. If there's anyone who would like to speak, I don't know, Bonnie, if you have anything for general comments.
There were no general comments that I received.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for keeping me on track. It's a lot of pressure to keep up with the agenda and talk and listen. Perfect. And with that, I will turn it over to Superintendent Hatzenbeeler.
Thank you. I'm going to have a special guest tonight in my report. I don't often do that, but we've had incredible learning happening this summer. Director Lee is off to taking his daughter to college at Pullman. He and Steve have a lion's share of summer programs. So Steve's going to just share a couple ideas about what has happened since we shared the ideas of what will happen way back in early June to what has transpired just over the last couple of months as we've tried to really engage kids, close gaps, and accelerate their learning. That was my cue for Steve that I think is right in the other room. So I'm hoping he didn't get snagged by maybe someone at the door. If we don't see him speak and log on shortly, this is my delay tactic, then I will continue with my report and we'll come back to him as soon as he's able to share. We weren't quite sure who might come or go or that kind of thing. Steve, are you there? Hearing none, I'm going to continue on, and then we'll see if he comes back in here in a minute. I'll check back in with him. So don't stare too hard at those slides. So happening since July, it's normally a pretty quiet time in the summer, so there's not a lot to report. But we did have a national night out. That's an extension activity across the country. We had a wonderful team go visit Prairie Ridge Community Center and just helped engage with our families up there in early August. And that's just a wonderful extension. We're having an opportunity to go back this Saturday and help to pass out some school supplies to get kids ready for summer. I see Steve joined on the continue, but Steve, will come back to your slides to share in just a minute or two. Summer work, thanks for giving a shout out to this amazing team. We did receive a grant to update lights. We did gym lights and classroom lights at PTR. With how much power is now, just replacing those lights, the taxpayers can see a return on that investment in just a year to a year and a half. So what's an amazing power saving. So we did a ton of lights, and to help us with that work, we about tripled the size of the crew. So bus drivers, paras, recent graduates helped to join the team. So it expanded to over 30. And not the least of which, if you remember, per the direction of the board to move to 2 elementary schools, that meant a good 18 or so staff had to pack up and move after school got out. And so this incredible team really helped. It was our pleasure to say thank you with a pizza party last week to thank them for all of their hard work over the summer. We've been talking about facilities. Take a look at this picture. This is what our community is going to see on Thursday night lights this year. Because of the tightness of referees, most of our football games home will be on a Thursday night. And this is what they'll see. Notice the cardinal at the center of the stadium, the red end zones. And if you can see the custom inlay, what they did, they changed the direction that the turf was laid every 5 yards, and it gave a look of fresh cut grass. So it really is a professional job. Our facilities maintenance athletic teams walked every seam looking to make sure that it was installed correctly. And I'm pleased to say where the last one was not passing G-Shock testing, this one passed in flying colors, of course, last Thursday. So we're now able to open it up to athletes and community. And we use capital projects money to pay for that. So just reminding our taxpayers that did not come out of general fund, but it was deemed necessary. So we used money out of the capital projects fund to complete that urgent repair that really was a safety issue. Most turf needs to be replaced every 8 to 10 years. This was going on year 15 and well past its useful life. And those of you that stood on that field in graduation could see just large areas where there was no turf left. That was just gone. So we're happy to say that that is done and will be safer for kids. We participated in a joint agency LaHar tabletop focusing on our emergency planning, emergency drills. So there we see us last Tuesday meeting with not only our administrative leaders, but also emergency planners, fire safety officials, and really helping to think through what would happen in a yellow alert LaHar emergency. The fact of moving to a LaHar without any warning is unlikely. We're likely to see increases in seismic activity and other early warning signs. So we were able to jointly come together and talk about what would happen if, and what is all of our responses. Very, very wonderful activity. Last week, we had an administrative advance planning the year. I sent you updates in your Friday update to really provide more examples of slides and notes from how we are trying to take the strategic plan and the goals that the board sets and weave and connect that directly to the work of leaders. And I think you're going to see a very clear through line in not only how we set the stage for that, but also ultimately what they share back with you in December as they create their school improvement plans. One of the presses is really about how do we incorporate stakeholder feedback, community involvement, kid involvement, staff involvement in that joint planning and crafting of goals. And I think you're going to be very impressed with that outcome. We were able to participate last Friday in the Touch a Truck event in partnership with the City of Orting. So there's a couple of photos of some of the equipment we brought. There's SOL Boone. Proudly, I don't know where they got that toy. I haven't seen it before. I presume that's his SWAT team connections. But kids just had a ball, and we shared some of the smiling faces on social media here recently as a result. We're going to continue facilities planning. So I just wanted to remind our community that we are not done. The needs have not gone away. We are still in an overcapacity scenario at every school, save Orting Middle, and that is about 40-50 students away from being at max capacity. So we need really the community's help. We need them to respond in a survey that'll be attached in our annual report on the back page that's going home mailed today, so people will get it in the next 2 days. And we would love as much of their help as possible to give us feedback so we can bring that data to you as a board and start to dissect it early September and say, okay, what is the most important issues to the community? What makes us say so? We'll compare what you saw previously to this data set, and then our architect and owner's rep will be here to help lead a discussion about what does this mean and what do we think those next steps should be? How might we modify the package in light of the feedback that we're getting from stakeholders? reminder to you all that when we last did our projected enrollment a year ago, we thought we'd be right about 5,000 students by the end of the decade. As Director Slagle shared in June, the current update shows not quite as high, and that gives you an idea of how quickly things can change from one year to the next. We're going to do this every year for the next years while we're in the midst of construction, just to keep vetting and making sure our plan aligns to the future need, and that we're doing our best due diligence to make sure we're advising you and our community as best as we can. But what I want you to see there, our maximum capacity with portables is just around 2,800. And our permanent capacity seats inside schools is around 2,000. And there's no scenario we can run that says we're going to have enough space for kids. Every scenario points to the fact we are already over capacity, and that problem just gets worse year after year as we get closer to the end of the decade. So the idea of doing nothing really isn't tenable. We have to do something. So the question is going to be, what's that right something? What we are taking some steps on, I shared this slide with the board on the right. What we learned is the placement of portables to create space at the high school campus is practically nil. We cut down some trees in the summer, but the only way to add classrooms other than taking up parking is to either displace or create a new option for early learning. Our ECAP building that we have currently is well over 50 years old. It's in not good condition. So Curtis Leonard, myself, have been meeting with a couple of vendors to get pricing on what a modular, similar to the mega portable early learning facility would look like. We know we have space at PTR, so we're currently getting bids and quotes about what that would be so we can make a decision. What we learned is if we had the financing available, if we made a decision by December, they think they can construct and have open an early learning 8-classroom addition by the start of next school year. Once those early learning students are off the high school site, that does give us the ability to move 2 developmental classrooms and ECAP over to that new facility, which would create capacity for both the high school and Orting Elementary School. As you recall, the only other option for space is in the main parking lot. And if you remember from your board workshop, Principal Freese reminded us that they have available parking for about 110 people, and they have a need for about 400. So we are tight on parking. We're trying not to displace and further push that out into the community and neighborhoods. But I am working on a solution that involves a lease or property acquisition still for the Sudu property adjacent to the high school. So I just wanted you to be aware that we are looking and trying to be forward thinking in our planning and our solutioning. So we're not working when it's too late. We're trying to get ahead of the curve, and we hope to have more information from you as we get that second quote. We are taking steps. So that's the conclusion of my report. If you can hold questions, we'll have Director Rabb just share a few notes from summer learning here in the district, and then we'll see if you have any questions about anything that you've heard.
Yeah, sorry about that mix.
Director Rabb, you are on mute, I believe, sir.
Okay, my microphone is on. Can you not hear me?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Oh, you can hear me. Good.
Yep.
Good. Yeah, I'm sorry about the delay on that. I was actually could see myself on the screen, and I'd launched into my conversation, but then you guys couldn't see or hear me, so I'm not sure what the deal was, but I think I'm all set up. So thank you for that. You'll remember that back in May, I took a group of administrators and teachers down to Stanford to the U-Cubed training that we had down there for a couple of days. The big idea behind the U-Cubed training is to kind of get rid of this idea that kids are either born with math brains or they're not, and that kids are either good at math or they're not based on the fact of that genetic disposition to being able to do math. And one of the ways to do that is to expose kids to activities that allow them to develop their math understanding through hands-on, collaborative, conversational challenges that get them to understand math conceptually, so that the procedural parts that we're so apt at presenting to kids actually have increased meaning. The National Council of Teacher of Mathematics Standards indicate that there are 8 teacher key practices that we want to pay attention to. 4 of which I'd like to highlight because they really represent the work that the kids are showing here. And that is tasks that promote reasoning and problem solving. Another is to use and connect math representations, build procedural fluency for conceptual understanding, and then lastly, to support procedural productive struggle. So what you see here is an example of kids that are working together in collaborative groups. In this particular case, this activity was built around 1, 2, and 3-dimensional shapes that kids were expected to work on. And if you want to pop the next slide, you'll see some more pictures of that. Oh, nope. We only have 2 in there? Nope. Okay, I thought we had another. I thought we had another picture there, but you can kind of see the triangle and the rectangle and the different things. Kids started with very simple one-dimensional designs, and then had to go to 2- and 3-dimensional designs using a rope that was tied together and all hands on deck. After they did this activity, they were asked questions like, what were your challenges? How did you solve them? Trying to get them to understand that math can and should be challenging, but solving those challenges together in a collaborative effort increases everybody's capacity to understand it and actually increases the engagement and the fun. And in the next slide, what you'll see is another activity. This is a boat building project. This was our high school kids that did this. The process involved the kids having to go through a series of thinking that started the way that it's defined by UCubed is to empathize, define, ideate, and prototype, and then test and review. And the empathize and define piece is all the collaborative element of coming together and looking at the materials that they have. The challenge was to design a structure that would hold the weight of 2 of the participants in a pool of water. And the structure, the only thing they had to work with was cardboard and duct tape. And the duct tape could not cover the entire bottom of the boat. It could only be done to seal it. It was a 3-day project. Again, they reflected on what worked, what improved. And then out of this work on this hands-on stuff, they're able to tie in such math concepts as ratio and proportion. And what you see here is not only did our kids participate in this and learn from it, but we also had one of our teachers, Kayla Jaco, who also participated in it, and our assistant principal, Tia Marquez, is also in there. And so everybody was engaged. It was a lot of fun. I was there taking these pictures and having a lot of fun with it. The kids for the summer camp were recruited by teachers. At the middle school, we were looking for kids that were believed that they did not possess a math mind. And we identified these kids before school got out. We recruited them for this activity, and they ended up with about almost 30 kids to begin with, and maintained anywhere from 5 to 20 kids per day over the course of the week that they did it. The high school camp was a week longer. It was over 2 weeks, and they recruited about 30 kids. Many of those kids were identified as from middle school teachers as incoming freshmen. And so they identified those kids, plus they also opened it up to other existing high school kids that they could use this opportunity as credit recovery for a math elective. Everything was done with a pre-post academic assessment as well as a pre-post attitude assessment, what kids thought about math going in and what kids thought about math going out. Today was the last day of the math summer camp, so I haven't seen that data yet. And the data on the the data on the middle school stuff, we have the academic data for that, which didn't show a huge shift. And we don't have the attitudinal data collected for that. But going back to my comment about the academic data not showing a huge shift, we were very intentional when we went into this, that what we really wanted to lean into was kids thinking about math more than we wanted to lean into the academic piece. to the point that when we were recruiting kids, one of the things that I pressed the instructors to do was not look for kids that were level 1 or level 2 on SBA per se and let that be the driver. We really wanted to deal with the attitudinal base of mathematics, see if we could shift some kids' thinking, because the philosophy and the research behind this math that Jo Boaler speaks about in her books and also taught us was that when kids, that attitudinal shift, when you make that attitudinal shift, it makes a huge difference in it. We read as an administrative team her book over the summer called Limitless Minds, and it's all based on the brain research around neuroplasticity, and that what we think really matters, and the language that we are told really matters. So we're also not just trying to change the attitudes of kids about themselves as learners, but also the attitudes of teachers about kids as learners as well, so that teachers understand that it's not about having or not having a math brain, but it's about giving kids the opportunity to participate in something that is rigorous, challenging, engaging, and collaborative. And through that process, they gain a lot of confidence and some success and some skills that will follow that. Then on the elementary side, we got kids identified. These kids are really identified through the academic lens. These are kids who are stuck right now with our Bookworms curriculum and the work that we've done with Bookworms and teaching literacy. We've identified some kids that are kind of stuck in that phonemic awareness stage. And one of the tools that we're introducing for that is this curriculum that's called SIPS, Student Data Driven Reading Instruction. It's a supplemental and skills-based curriculum. You see Beth Crow is one of our instructors that's working on that and helping and design that. This is really designed to identify those kids who, without that phonemic awareness, are going to continue to be stuck. And so there's two elements of this summer program. One is leaning into the instruction and development of their phonemic awareness through this SIPS curriculum. And then the second part in the slide to follow is it's part of a STEM camp. And we engage the kids in activities that are STEM based. And what you see here is two different examples of that. The one on the left is called the open mic module. And basically what kids are expected to do is they're expected to backwards design and create a microphone type device and then use that device to pitch the invention itself. And then on the right-hand side, the rescue squad, what that really is about is problem solving. Kids are given an environmental dilemma, a process of design and communication, working on their social skills together as a group and some engineering stuff. They design a solution to this environmental problem and then present that problem to their peers. So it's a kind of a twofold kind of a thing. We want to be able to help them learn how to read and then use that skill in a problem-based and collaborative-based project. And the engagement level is very high, and I would also say engagement in the high school summer camp, for example. I was talking to Cliff Freeze today, and he took his administrative team, and they were doing an activity that we actually did when we were down in Stanford. And one of the things that they noticed was that every single high school student was working on something and not their phone. And then the one kid that pulled out his phone didn't end up being a gotcha because he was using his calculator. So they were actually engaged in the project, and Cliff and his administrative team went in and witnessed that, and he called to share that information with me. So, but we're pretty excited about what's happening for our kiddos here in Orting, and that's just a brief summary of what it looks like for you.
So that concludes the report. Just wanted to make sure you and the public heard some sound bites about the learning that's been happening. We're, of course, very grateful to our staff that have been helping to make that happen, and the planning and facilitation. Without them, that couldn't happen. And we did represent a pretty significant investment of ESSER dollars, the 20% set aside to help lead interventions and supports before after school in the summer. So I wanted to report back to you what the public is receiving for that investment. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Steve, do you anticipate some of these, some of the work that you did over the summer being implemented into the math classes?
Yeah, we have 3 middle school teachers that taught the summer school class, and that's half of the math staff at the middle school, and we have 2 at the high school, and so we're starting small and starting with a lot of enthusiasm. And what we hope to have happen as a result of this is reflecting on what worked, what didn't, and then how can we translate that into our math practices moving forward. So absolutely giving these guys a chance to, when they were building this math summer camp, one of the things that I said to them was, this is your camp. This is your learning, and your experience here is as important as it is for the kids, because one of the things that I realized with our elementary literacy adoption is one of the challenges that we have when we present something new like this is giving the adults that are participating in it a chance to unlearn some things and challenge some beliefs that they've had that have been built over time, to relearn some other things, and giving them the flexibility of literally choosing out of all the activities what activities they would choose, modify as they went along, and really with the gauge that they were looking at was primarily student engagement as they were going along. And if that engagement started to wane a little bit, then they would lean in together, try to figure that out, so that they collect that data about what was really working for kids and why was it working, and those exit interviews for kids, and then use that information to take that back to their PLC teams and talk about that experience with their teachers and with their administrators. And now what do we do? We're launching into a year-long pilot in a middle school math curriculum called Illustrative Math that is based on all these types of ideas and whatnot like that. We're providing some teachers some training. So we're really ripe for that, because half of that team experienced this and they're hungry for these kinds of tasks and activities for kids. So we're hoping good things moving forward.
Thank you.
Are we going to continue to use the amount of student engagement as decision-making tool for teachers with the different programs, so that we can talk? Sorry about the dogs. I'll just end my question. They're going on.
Yeah, we're leaning into one of the things that Ed has spoken about pretty passionately, and with the administrators in the administrative advance, and building off of the work that we've done around agency and dignity, is student voice. And one of our data points, our qualitative data points that we're looking at, is really trying to explore this idea of giving kids more voice in the learning process. And we have various ways of connecting that to what's already in practice, including the OSPI student growth goals. So to your point, Kathy, we really want to lean in and increase the level of student input in the learning process, and let that be a key indicator for us in terms of what's working, what's not working, and what modifications we need to do.
I'm glad to hear that, because I know we use Ames Web for our math fluency and computation and that, and that's not going to show the engagement or the involvement, where some of these other programs that are going to change the foundational way kids look at math, which of course eventually will help them because their attitude will be so much better. It's hard to be good at math if you couldn't stand it.
Yeah, kids are, and in the research that is done with Jo Boaler, and in the book, she talks a great deal about it. the United States is kind of unique around some of the leading countries in attitudes and beliefs about mathematics. And like say, for example, she uses Japan as an example. And one of the things that the Japanese teachers do differently than most of what we do is they intentionally create opportunities for kids to make mistakes, because the brain research says that your brain grows through mistakes more than it does through success. And so one of the things that we have to lean into is this idea that mistakes are okay. Not only are they okay, they're good and they're healthy and they develop brain matter. And so part of that shift is some of the work that we have to do moving forward.
Also, mistakes is one of the best ways that a teacher can assess what's going on and what the real problem is, because you see what the thinking is.
And one of the things, Kathy, and I think both you and Joanne were teachers that had big hearts for kids. So I think you understand whether this applies to you or not, but you understand how teachers get here, which is watching a kid struggle is very hard. And a lot of times we go into the profession because we love and care about kids. And what we want to do is we want to kind of reduce and kind of soothe that struggle. And what we're learning about the brain research is that you've got to figure out a way to help and nurture them through that struggle, but not lessen it to the point, it's that proximal developmental stage. So that's the part that we've got to take the love and affection that teachers have for kids, but then also tie that into what kids are going to need moving forward to be successful in the world that they're going into. And we're going to have to kind of lean in on some of those struggles and help them persist through those and learn from those struggles.
Very good. Thank you very much, Steve.
Welcome.
Board, any additional questions about the superintendent's report? Okay. Ed, thank you. With that, I will turn it over to the financial report. Did not see any questions. Looked good to me. Thank you, Marcy. And then Steve, you're up next with an update on schools identified for improvement. Hope you're on mute.
Yeah, none of us misses the COVID time, but like Melissa said, we're a little bit our trigger fingers are a little bit weak. This should be brief for you. We have 2 schools identified for improvement. Orting Middle School, which is identified as a Tier 2 Target 3 school, and what that means is that they've got 3 demographic groups that are below the threshold according to the Washington School Improvement Framework. And the 3 groups are Black, African American, English language learners, and students with disabilities. And because they're a Tier 2 group, they are in a status of improvement that is at a lower level of concern. It's more of an informative piece. They still needed to collect data, develop a school improvement plan, but didn't even need to submit the school improvement plan to OSPI. We have that here. Both Aaron Lee and myself are working with Kevin and Earl on that work. And at this point for Orting Middle School, we've got these groups, we've got them identified as target groups to collect data on them, both quantitative as well as qualitative. So both academic as well as attitude, attendance, some of those different kinds of things. And then figure out what's working, not working, and really kind of lean into those guys. On the second school for improvement, PTR, is considered a Tier 3 Target 1, which means it's one group, and compounded, which means it's a Tier 3 because they've been in this status for 2 years now. Now, what's important to note is when they first got into this status, they were in 2 areas. They were in English language learners and students with disabilities. they've moved out of the range for students with disabilities. That has shown marked improvement. But the English language learners are the ones that have lagged behind, and therefore, because it's a second rotation, and the rotations got mixed up with COVID, so they're compressed. So there's not as much time between them. And in fact, this cycle we're in right now, which would normally be a 3-year cycle, it renews this coming spring. So we'll have some more data to go by that time. As a part of a tier 3, identification, some money came with that. $27,000 from the state came with that to provide additional resources for the school to address the problem. And Principal Nikki Mesa has determined to use that money to provide training for teachers. And the training is GLAD training. It's probably something you've heard of before. GLAD training is an acronym for Guided Language Acquisition Design. It is a very well-known and highly regarded program for addressing core instruction, not intervention, core instruction around English language learners. And it is literally affects all learners in a positive way because it increases the modalities that kids learn from than what would be more typical. So Nikki is going to provide over the course of the year, she's going to take one of her staff meetings as well as some time in January. She's hired some trainers to come in and she's training the entire staff, including classified staff. So we've had over the last, well, I went pre-COVID, so 3 years ago. So probably before, it might even have before I got here. There's a week-long training that happens every summer in GLAD, and I went, like I said, pre-COVID 3 years ago. We always send a group of teachers. One of the things that I've always kind of wrestled with a little bit around that is, what's our capacity now to take that week-long training and do something with it? And Nikki's going to answer that question for PTR this year, because all the teachers are going to get it, and then we'll see what we can come with this. Ed has been talking with Aaron and myself a little bit about some additional support in the core instruction around Universal Design for Learning. That's called UDL, and it's also another very strong resource that has kind of got its start looking at supporting students with disabilities. But again, it's the same kind of an idea of how you design a lesson that gives all students access without reducing the rigor or the complexity of it. So you're not making things simpler so that they can do it. You're creating the process so that they have more access to be able to do it. GLAD training is like that. As we move forward, I think this is going to dovetail into some of the work that we want to start doing this year around understanding universal design for learning. So you can kind of see how, even though it's might be isolated in one situation, we are finding ways to connect and keep that red thread going throughout our system.
Very good.
I might have missed with my jumping up and down. Was it in all academic areas for the two schools, or was it just like English or math, or do they not separate that anymore? Yeah,
it doesn't delineate from that. It basically takes the composite of ELA and math and then breaks that down by demographic. So the composite of, say, white students compared to the composite of African American ELL, and how did that composite do compared to that? And when that drops down below that threshold, that is a statewide threshold that's determined by the 10% lowest of all schools in the state. So they create that threshold out of that, and then that's where you factor in on that. So it's either and, but we also recognize it would be easy to say that the ELL problem is ELA, but that's not necessarily the case, because if the kids are struggling with reading, they're going to really struggle with math, right? They're going to really not be able to understand what's going there. So we're leaning into, and that's what the GLAD training does. It doesn't differentiate by that. It really tries to get that language acquisition, and it's it's a multidisciplinary kind of approach. So it mixes the science and the social studies and the ELA and the math, and it kind of blends it together so that kids are experiencing not in silos, but they're learning that language acquisition through a multidisciplinary approach. And that's also the Universal Design for Learning also has that tendency too. Good stuff.
Steve, is there do any of the programs include working with the parents of those students to show them what the students are doing and how they can help and help them to better understand what's going on with their kids in the classroom?
Great question. Because Nikki, as a part of her school improvement plan, she has a key parent component on that. In the same way, we want to affect the attitudes that teachers and students have about math. We know with our English language learners, we have to affect the attitude that not just the students, but the families have about the learning process and education. And I think sometimes we definitely want to lean into that and increase their understanding of what we're doing. And so she's also got planned, I don't remember if it's more than 2, but there's at least 2 different evening events where these families will come together and showcase what the kids are learning and doing, and then also providing parental support for how can you help your child at home as well with this.
Okay, that's good.
And include food.
Always.
Steve, I just want to make sure I understand, that my expectations are kind of in order. So it sounds like Nikki has a great plan that she'll be executing throughout the year, but you said this cycle ends in the spring. So it's possible and perhaps likely that we'll still be in the tiers for both schools then with this next.
Maybe not. And what I'm hoping for PTR is that maybe they won't be, because if they do, then they would go up to another level, which increases the level of accountability and increases some of the scrutiny that the state has over it. Yeah. So we're really hoping, we're really hoping that we can gain that ground this year, and that they would be out of identification. If OMS was in that status with even one of the 3 groups, they would be in the same spot that PTR is, where they would be a tier 3, and then there would be some support like PTR has. So the difference being normally there's a 3-week window for them to work through that, but because of the COVID thing, that got compressed. That can be an advantage or a disadvantage. I'm not sure which way it's gonna fold out for us.
Okay.
One thing I would add, that the data used to make this determination stemmed all the way back to 2018, 2019. Director Lee next month will provide an overview for the board about the Washington School Improvement Framework, what it is, how it's constructed, and he'll share a data overview specifically related to state testing data, just so you can see. I don't know that the state will have it deemed finalized yet, but you'll see preliminary, and like he did last couple of years, he'll break it down by subgroups so you can see where things fit. So that'll be coming next month, so you can get an overview of what is that framework, where does it live, how does it relate to state testing, and how are our kids faring, at least with an initial data overview.
You touched real quick, Steve, on that Principal Mesa had a plan, and she was going to actually share some of that in one of her presentations to us. I can't remember which one you said, but knowing that the middle school is not at the same level as PTR, can we expect to see whatever Principal Collins and Vice Principal McWright, whatever stuff whatever plans they have going into the school year on trying to tackle those things, can we expect to see that as well?
Yes, we could do that in a couple of ways. I'm happy to provide additional updates as we move along. One clarification that I would add is the school improvement plan that they needed to create is separate, and it doesn't have to be completely separate, but it's different than the continuous school improvement plans that we have them create, because it's set against what they're being identified for. So they had to use a template given by the state, which looks different from our template. But the data that they're collecting And how they're processing and making meaning out of that is very much a part of the process that we'll be using with that. So we should be able to speak to those things moving forward, even through our own school improvement plans.
Thank you for that. I have a hard time sometimes tying the things together when I hear them in this format, and then later on down the road with the schools and remembering what goes where. So sometimes the big highlighter is helpful for me.
Yeah, it's our acronym thesaurus that we're all creating. We're famous for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a question actually for Ed. When Jerry Silvernail retired, what did we end up doing, since this directly relates to the ELA cell?
Absolutely. We hired another certificated teacher. At the start of last school year, our ELL population was in the world of around 55 FTE. We ended last year at about 120, so we over doubled. What we're seeing is a lot of families, particularly in the Tahali area, of a foreign background as they come in the tech industry and other areas. So ELL really grew to the point where we needed 2 full-time certificated staff, and that's what we're going to start the year with.
That's a lot of students. Wow. Okay, great questions. All right. Thank you, Director Rabb. Now on to our fantastic looking strategic plan.
Last time you saw the content, it was in the form of slides with just words, and I am very excited to share with you the new format. If you recall, last year, Rashad O'Neill created this strategic plan, and with his departure was whatever program and format he used. So Brittany literally had to recreate everything. Although much of the content is very similar, we did make a few revisions based on your feedback. So this will be a faster, high-level overview, but again, happy to answer any questions. So featuring the front page is just why we're all here, is featuring our students. We did add a table of contents because we added a couple of pages over previous, so that's new. One of the things in last year's strategic plan, we identified 14 languages spoken in our families, and that grew to 19 this year. So using the language native to our families, we tried to put a welcome page using many of those languages, many as we could find translations for. Now it's difficult to find something for everything, but that idea that when we think about connection and we think about belonging, we want to model that in everything to include their first introduction to who we are. We have the same data page with updated information this year about what comprises our district. So the data is updated, that conception is not new. We have mostly a similar message with how did this plan come to be? Who did we talk to? What are key themes that the board considered? Not that this will be widely read, but we wanted to make sure that anybody reading it for the first time was caught up about the work that you did to not only get stakeholder voice, but how you kind of debated and weighed that to develop this plan. We felt like that was needed. With your feedback, we took all of those pictures and something that fits on a page. So this represents the conception we shared last month, which is who are we again through the eyes of a student or the eyes of a staff member or a leader. We're just carrying some of those key themes that embody our values and who we aspire to be and how we aspire to grow. So a few key words and language there. The theory of action, no change from what I shared last month. But if you remember, the old one is really about, we said if we are relentless in creating schools, and in our reflection, we weren't really about creating schools, we're about building and growing kids. So the second half of this sentence is the same, which led to the words around connected, inspired, empowered. But the first one is different, which is if we engage students in rigorous learning opportunities, which I would say happens in the classroom, out of the classroom, everywhere there's a contact. And we brought back those themes around agency and dignity. So trying to build that through line in our theory of action, the connection to agency and dignity. So this page isn't new, but we spent a lot of time here in our advance about that guarantee. What does that mean? What does that look like? How's that connected to our TPEP process, our PLC, our professional development, how we set and monitor goals? So really trying to get serious through this lens around agency and dignity. No change on mission, vision, values, other than I added one word, which I shared with you, and that's the word known. Really trying to get to know our learners through that data perspective. And we would say that lives in data like smarter balance assessments, but also lives in conversations and relationships and personal connections. How do we know what they need, and how are we responding to the needs of our families and kids? From a goal perspective, no change on the goal language based on your feedback. We still moved from 5 goals to 4. First goal is academic growth. What's changed? We took away all the educanese. At least I hope we did. So in July, you said, we love qualitative, we want quantitative in there, we want ways to measure and talk about progress along the way. But nobody knows what some of these acronyms are. So rather than build a glossary that I felt like people wouldn't go to or read, we just changed it to simplify the language to what we hope is lay people friendly. So in each of the 4 goals, we tried to remove acronyms and really put what would be street conversations that would live at a grocery store, that people could understand not only the goals that you set for the system as a board, but how are we going to track and monitor. And you'll notice for each goal, again, we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket. These represent not only end views or milestones that we'd want to achieve, but regular measures along the way of how are we going to know that we're making impact. Second goal is around whole child. Again, the only change from what you saw last month is really, or the second goal is community partnership and connection. Third goal, whole child. Fourth goal, student support systems. No changes to the goal language, but we really tried to work to take away the educanese or acronyms to make it lay people friendly. And no page to the ensuring implementation page. Still the same strategies to make sure we're making progress and keeping that public commitment. And no page or no change on the last page other than make sure names and dates and everything were updated and accurate. So I hope you like what you see. I hope that represents our conversations. Strategic plan is really the board's work. Our hope is that we took your ideas and language and desires and with Brittany's help and feedback along the way, put it in a format that would be inviting to the public to really help know who we are, what we believe, and what we're about. So we aren't looking for a formal vote of approval, but we would love for you, any of you that has any concerns or any comments, to let us be known before we start to share that and update it on the website or things of that nature.
There's no concerns from me, not now and not tomorrow. So I think it's visibly appealing. You want to kind of read what's on there. So well done with the whole design by Brittany and everybody else that was involved in that. And I do just really want to thank you for listening.
Oh, Melissa, you hit the mute button.
Oh, geez. Well, see. Anyway, thank you for making it lay people friendly.
You're welcome. If you're saying good things, we wanted the mute button to be off.
I think I was saying good things, but probably rambling. I just really appreciate that those thoughts as I present them all the time. It takes me forever to figure out an acronym, and then I'll forget it 2 weeks later. So, I appreciate that 100%.
I agree. I think, not having them or not understanding, because sometimes we get those in there and we just don't get it because you're trying to piece it together, right, to understand. So I thought great job on this. So, and it's not overburdened, right? So, right to the point. So good job.
Mm-hmm. I just, seeing this all put together, I echo Melissa's thoughts that it's very well designed and it's very consumable communication for the community. I think it's something that anybody could pick up and understand what we're about. It's something I'm proud to share with the community, and also understanding how many iterations that you've gone through, through this journey to come to this point. I sometimes things get watered down, and I didn't feel that that was the case with this. I think the important points that we valued, that I heard from the staff conversations and through Your Vision Ed, and even my side conversations with other board members, I think the values that we wanted to see put forth were held and presented nicely in this. So thank you very much. I'm excited for everyone to see it.
So some next steps with your feedback, we are going to replace the posters when you come in the boardroom. Probably not with every page, but maybe that welcome page and the goals. So people, theory of action. So I think there's key things we'd want to lift and make sure. I think a lot of people notice that when they come in the room. And so we'll do some replacement there. A year ago, we did a video to launch. We had a slight delay on the launching of the video, but we did a video. I think at the minimum, we can tie the goals and some of the budget conversation with some updates or posts from Brittany. We do have the strategic plan unpacked in a calendar that families will receive, a take-home hard print calendar. So in addition to the plan, they'll see those ideas in our calendar here in a few weeks. We'll have that visible in our boardroom. I think we can push messages on social media. And then, of course, our school improvement plans. You'll see tomorrow in my board update, but you can see how we launched last week connected to these ideas, just some sound bites and examples. And I know you'll see a clear through line when we present our continuous school improvement plans to you. And then I would expect we see updates and progress monitoring not only in board meetings, and we'll want to make sure we get your feedback about what's most salient, and we'll build a calendar for when we're providing updates on certain things. But in the spring is where the rubber hits the road and it's the funnest time. That's when you get to hear our leaders and our kids and our staff talk about what does this look like and sound like in action. And those will be highlights that surely you will not want to miss. So hopefully that gives you an idea of some next steps, and we really appreciate your feedback that went this far, and then your future feedback, which will help connect our work in the community and bridge that. That's a big focus for us this year, is making sure our community is invited in and we're engaged in our community as well from a school perspective.
Very good. Cool. Thumbs up from Melissa. Everybody else, we're all good. Wonderful. Thank you. So if we were voting, it would be approved.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Miss Westover. This is a prepared by, and I saw you join the meeting. I appreciate you being here for any questions that the board has. This is in regards to our restraint and isolation report. It's something that we review annually as a board. So I just want to open it up and ask the board if you had any questions or comments. No? Okay. I'd just like to acknowledge that after last year's kind of gut punch with the number of reports, that it was nice. I don't know if it's still nice. But I'm pleased to see that with the training and the actions that were taken to reduce the number of issues, that our numbers have gone down. And obviously for our kids, I hope that all that work continues and we continue to learn from it. Good. Jennifer, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
All right, I will move on to our second reading of policy considerations. And when you're ready, if there's no discussion, I will take a motion.
I move to approve the second reading of policy considerations.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes. All right, in tonight's consent agenda, we have items 1 through 5, and just a reminder that we did a modification to agenda with additional personnel information. So I will take a motion for these. I'm pretty sure Melissa is motioning with her mute button on.
All right. Are you sure? So again, I move to approve items 1 through 5 on the consent agenda.
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And then we have a number of action items tonight. I will take a motion for number 1.
Sorry, I'm used to Debbie getting up and presenting.
Oh, it is?
Or we
I
do that.
apologize.
Do we have to do that or?
It does say presented by.
I'd be
It
happy to share a little information if you would like me to do so.
Thank you.
I don't need it. I just didn't know if I was waiting.
It's your call.
Board, I read through each of these. I don't feel like I need additional information. Board, would you like an explanation on at least items, let's say 1 through 4?
No.
No, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. So then we'll just go ahead with the motions one at a time, 1 through 4.
I move to authorize educator Carrie Dixon to be able to teach in the area of special education through a board-approved out-of-endorsement assignment waiver effective September 5th, 2023.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Can I get a motion on item number 2?
I move to authorize educator Kendra Sukajawa? I am sorry. Debbie, can you please?
Sujikawa.
Thank you. To be able to teach in the area of elementary education through a board-approved out-of-endorsement assignment waiver effective September 5th, 23.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 3.
I move to authorize the district to request new CTE conditional certificates through the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction ahead of September 1, 23 on behalf of the career and technical education teachers listed within the presented memo.
I second it.
Thank you. Bonnie, you got that? Okay, good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And number 4.
I move to authorize the district to request CTE conditional certificate renewals through the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction ahead of September 1st on behalf of the career and technical education teachers listed within the presented memo. Is that the same thing?
I can share with you that the first one, the second one is for renewals, and the first one was for the initial time in which we were getting a conditional certificate for the teachers.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, board.
Thank you. And I just want to acknowledge, I know Joanne had sent a question just prior to the meeting, so hopefully you'll have a chance to respond to that at some point.
I think I got a response.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I read it.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. I
Yes.
didn't check the email last minute. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Item number 5, 2023-2024 non-represented salaries. This is prepared by Director Christensen. So I will take a motion.
I move to approve the 2023-2024 non-representative salary schedule as presented with an effective date of 9/1/2023.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And one of my favorite ones, the surplus request. Can I get a motion for this?
I move to approve the disposal of the surplus items as presented.
Second?
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And the big one.
I move to approve resolution number 11.2022-2023 for the approval of the 2023-2024 budget, as well as the 4-year budget summary and the 4-year enrollment projection as outlined in the budget presentation.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. That was a lot of action items tonight, and I appreciate each of you for doing your homework and reading through those and sending questions in advance. So it can feel like we're rubber stamping these as we move through them in the meeting, but just to assure the community they've all been reviewed in advance and questions discussed prior to us getting to this moment. Good. And with that, I'll open up the floor for board comments.
I will just,
Sorry.
sorry, I just wanted to give a quick thank you. I know that there are some of you that are still working out of central office, and I cannot even imagine what it's like in there on this 3rd day of extreme heat. Thank you for not making me sit in there tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, our central office does not have air conditioning. So it's effectively a greenhouse. And it's been long, hot days in those offices. So.
Well, I have a story that Ed encouraged me to share, and I'm hoping the dogs cooperate here. So, as most of you know, I walk from my house to Safeway a lot instead of driving, and I was coming back from Safeway carrying a gallon jug of milk and a bag of groceries, and there was this kid up ahead of me, and he turns around and he said, "Can I help you, ma'am? I'd be happy to carry your groceries." And I said, "Oh, I'm okay." And then a little while later, he asked me again, and I said, "I recognize you. You came to the board meeting. Are you one of the wrestlers?" He goes, "Oh, yes, I'm Apollo." And I said, "Oh, well, thank you for offering to help me, but I'm okay." And then we crossed the street, and he goes, "Really, I'd be happy to carry them to your house." And I said, "Here's the thing. I'll be happy to let you know when I need help, but I got to tell you, the doctor said motion is lotion. You learn that from exercise." And he said, "Okay." I said, "But I thank you very much." And that was one of our state champions offering an old mature lady bringing a gallon jug of milk and a bag of groceries from Safeway. So really made me feel good that we are raising our old children to be old children in so many ways.
Love that. I love that. That's a great story. Thank you, Kathy. I love that. Yes. Great kids. All right.
And the dogs cooperated.
Mine are not going to be here in a minute. So with that, I am going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting tonight. Thank you, everyone. Stay cool, and we will talk again soon.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Have a good night.
They all started barking just now.
7:04.